MMA fans? This is Sophisticated MMA. I'm Kate. We're not in my kitchen today. I'm actually out of town. But speaking of differences, I've got a really special treat for you guys. I'm here with Justin Jaynes. Congratulations on your first MMA or UFC win and your bonus. I have to say, I don't think that happens very often, that somebody both gets a debut and a bonus. Am I correct?
Yeah, I tell you what, I was really surprised by it. You know, usually it's wait for the main card fighters, guys that have been around for a long time. But, you know, I was able to get in there, put on a show, make quick work of Frank. And, you know, Dana thought it was good enough for the bonus. And I'm not going to argue with him. So I'm pretty happy about it.
41 seconds and beating a veteran. Yeah, I'd say that qualifies for a bonus. So that's absolutely awesome. Wanted to say congratulations before we jumped right into it. So for my followers, this is going to be a newer segment. We're going to call it Date with Kate. Justin and I are grabbing drinks and getting to know one another. Yeah, absolutely. So if I were on a date with a fighter, I probably would be asking him all sorts of in-depth questions, but I'd also want to know a few really key things. Like, first of all, how did you get started in MMA? Because I know you've been fighting for a while now.
Yeah, I got started in 2007, and kind of like I do now, I was working in a gym back in my hometown in Richmond, Michigan. And a friend of mine, well, it's now a friend of mine, his name's Andy McLaughlin, was an MMA trainer. And he kept coming in, just being very persistent, telling me like, oh man, you have a good wrestling base. You do really good in MMA, and really wasn't that sold on it. But after weeks, you know, of him kind of bugging me about it and, you know, telling me the pros of it, more pros than cons, I took a fight and I lost by guillotine choke in the first round. And then I thought I didn't want to stop, you know, on a loss. So I was like, all right, I'll do one more. And then I won one. And after that, I was hooked.
So it was more about going out on top than it was, I mean, after that first fight, were you more or less, oh, I'm not sure if this is for me, but I don't want to like quit in defeat? Was that kind of it?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It's like I have a big ego and I don't like to lose. And when you have a record of 0-1 and in anything, even if I'm going to go play tennis, like that's kind of super bummer. So I was going to take one more, and I ended up fighting my second fight in like this VFW hall in front of like 50 people. And I won by decision, and it felt like I was a world champion right then. And that's when I realized I want to do it for the rest of my life. Yeah, that was it.
You were hooked. So before that, were you an MMA fan at all, or?
No, not really.
No?
You know, I think, you know, I'm getting my times tables mixed up a little bit. But I remember the first fight I ever watched was Tito Ortiz and Ken Shamrock. And I remember where I watched it, but I don't remember if it was before I had my first fight or if it was after I had my first fight. But after that, after seeing that kind of rivalry, I liked it a lot.
Sure. It is a little tough because I've actually only been really closely following for maybe the last 4 years. So anytime that I go back before that, it's like, oh, did I watch that fight or did I watch it later? I'm not sure. So then I won't go way back. Who's your favorite fighter right now?
Right now, my favorite fighter is Justin Gaethje. I really like his style. You know, he's wrestling base. He doesn't use his wrestling in his fights, and he just stands and strikes. And you know, that's kind of how I want to, you know, I guess I don't want to say copy off, but be like, because whether Justin wins or loses, he's throwing heat and he's trying to knock his opponent's head off, and he gets performance tonight almost every time he fights. And you know, that wouldn't be not a bad guy to try to emulate, I guess.
I think he's at 9 right now. 9 bonuses, I want to say.
I'm sure. I wouldn't doubt if every fight he has is a bonus.
Well,
like I said, everyone's buzzing about his fights, so that's what I want to.
You can now say that 100% of your UFC fights have equated to a bonus. So you
that's
get to
right.
say
that's
that.
A fact.
Nobody else has that kind of a record.
That's true. Not very many people have that.
So after, because I know cuts, you were saying that like your weight was pretty on point. You were ready. You were waiting for the call. So I'm guessing the cut wasn't maybe too terrible. But what would you say is your favorite post-cut meal?
Ooh, you know what? I like sushi. You know, I like go get a couple carbs, get some good protein, get my sodium intake so I can start getting my water back in me. But so yeah, right after my weigh-in, me and my family, we shot over to sushi and had all you can eat, and we went hard on it.
So you're still healthy even after that. I think that's great. And sushi's delicious.
I just think it's awesome. Whether it was healthy, even if it wasn't healthy, I'd still grub on it. But leading up to, when you cut your weight and you burn all those calories, and you get all that gunk out of your system, you want to replenish it with good fuel. So that's my favorite post weigh-in meal.
That's awesome.
And it's delicious, so there's nothing wrong with that.
So you mentioned family. You have a son, correct?
Yeah, I have an 11-year-old son. His name's Ben.
I was just gonna ask how old is he. So what does Ben think about you fighting?
It's kind of funny because he doesn't show his emotion when it comes to that stuff. So when I told him, he's like, "Oh, you're fighting this weekend in the UFC?" I was like, "Yep." He's like, "Oh, that's cool." And then he goes back to playing video games. And then like after my fight, I saw him and I was like, "Hey, did you watch that?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh, how was it?" He's like, "It was pretty cool. It's like 5 O's cool, like COOOOOL." And I'm just like, okay. But with that being said, he was at his friend's mom's house, or he was at his friend's house watching the fights, and his friend's mom videotaped him, and he was a lot more excited when I wasn't there than when I was there.
So maybe he just likes to play it cool. He plays it cool.
He's cool hand Luke. Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, sounds a lot like it. Do you think not necessarily, I don't want to speak for his future, but do you think he'll train? Because I know a lot of kids get into it. Or does he train at all?
Yeah, he does grappling right now. I'm not gonna pressure him into fighting. Like I wouldn't pressure anybody into going through what I've went through the last couple of years, especially someone like him that I love and want to support. And he's a very smart kid, and I think he can take his mind and be successful in other things. If he does eventually decide like, hey, I want to do this, I'm not going to tell him no, but I am going to tell him, how hard it is and how much stuff he's going to have to overcome and stuff. And I think, beginning off, a lot of people don't realize how much perseverance you have. This is not just two guys jumping in the cage. There's so much training, so much diet, and you have to have everything go right at one time for things like this to happen. So am I object to him doing it? No. Would I prefer he did it? I don't prefer he do it by any means. But that's his decision, and I'll guide him and I'll tell him what I think, as he grows up over the next couple of years. But as for training, he's required to train. If he doesn't train, he can't play video games. Because like I said, whether he decides to compete or not, that's okay. But he has to be able to protect himself in this world we live in today.
I think that's so smart, especially the trade-off with the video games. Because why let him run into a virtual world to kick ass, but not be able to do it in his own life? No, I think that's fantastic. It's one of the things I encourage a lot of parents to do. Get your kids into, whether it's wrestling or jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai, anything at all, so that they have that base for, I know how to stand up for myself if I need to. I think that's really important. So you're living in Vegas. When did you move out to Vegas from Michigan?
I did my college internship in Vegas I first came to Vegas 2009, started training at the gym. I did my internship in 2010, 2011. I graduated college with a bachelor's degree in December of 2011, and I moved out here a couple months after that.
Bachelor's degree in
sport and fitness management.
Oh, nice. Okay, so you're very well rounded in all of this. So I try
to be.
Are you looking to maybe coach or manage as well?
Management, no. Coach, yeah, I'm already coaching. I have a couple fighters under me as of right
awesome.
Now, and I help a lot of people out. I coach at Extreme Couture. I train regular civilians that just want to learn to fight, and then I have a couple fighters that I'm helping progress through the ranks as I did. Do I plan on doing that for the rest of my life? No. I'll probably end up going into law enforcement when my career is over.
Wow. Okay. All right. So what do you like about living in Vegas? Like, what's your favorite spot?
And well, Vegas is, the thing I like about Vegas is there's not a lot to do in Las Vegas, but there's a lot to do in Nevada. So if I want to go,
you got to go back, because everybody that I don't go to Vegas a lot, So, but everybody that I've ever talked to is like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. There's so many shows and restaurants and casinos. And you just said there's not a lot to do in Vegas. So
Well,
you're going to have to expand on that.
No, yeah, no problem. So like coming to Vegas for 5 days at a time is nice because you get the shows and you get the bars and the casinos. But anything longer than 5 days, you'll find out like you can't live down at the Strip. I might go to the Strip. Well, I go to the Strip less than 3 times a year by myself. Like as if I'm meeting somebody there, or if someone comes into town. That's the only time. I don't go down there to people watch or to sightsee. Like I've already seen it. I've already done it. You know, I'm more of an outdoorsy guy. So like Mount Charleston is only an hour away. You can see it. I can see it from the back of my house right over here. They have snow on it. You know, we can snowboard in January, February, March, all the way up to April. You know, I like to deer hunt. They have mule deer in Nevada, some of the biggest mule deer. I drive 2 hours north. I can hunt like an animal. If I want to go fishing, I can go to Lake Mead, another 45-minute drive away. You have Colorado River, Hoover Dam. If you want to go hiking, I have Red Rock. That's 30 minutes away. So Las Vegas itself, there are some things to do. But, you know, when you think of Las Vegas, you think of the bright lights and the Strip. There's really not that much to do for a long period of time, you know, down there. But if you're willing to drive an hour or 2 hours, you can almost do anything you can think of.
It sounds like
in California, you know, the ocean's only 3 or 4 hours away as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you mentioned deer hunting. I did shoot 1 deer when I was 12.
Oh yeah. Nice.
I didn't like it. I mean, the actual like act of it wasn't so bad. It was afterwards when they were like dressing the deer. I was like, I don't think I like doing this, but I fully support it. So when did you get into deer hunting? Was that back in Michigan and you just kind of brought it with you, or was it something you got out?
It was a Michigan thing. You know, it's kind of funny, you know, actually how I got into deer hunting. My dad, I got in an argument. I'm going to try to remember this relatively well, but I got in an argument with my mom and stepdad. And I remember running out. We had a 40-acre farm, and I ran out into the woods because I was going to hide. I was going to run away from home, of course. And it's probably over video games or something.
How old were you?
I remember I probably was like 8 or 9 years old. Oh my gosh! You know, come on, you never did the backpack, put all your clothes in the backpack, and tried to run away. Come on.
I got as far as the front door, and my dad was like, "I don't care," and I'm like, "Well, that just." Yeah. I mean, like my father was definitely a like, "Go kill yourself." See if I care. So it kind of takes the wind out of your sails a little bit. Oh. That's as far as I got was the front door.
Well, I was fortunate to get about a quarter of a mile back into the woods, and I was walking down this trail, and I come because our woods goes like half mile back. My parents still own the land, and I remember exactly where it was, the exact spot. And I turn this corner, and this monstrous buck is just standing there, and I'm just like, oh shit! And it runs, and I start chasing after it like I can catch it, right? And I was like, oh my God, it was a Saturday too, because we were supposed to go to church the next morning. Well, I woke up before my alarm to go to church, and I put on like this old army camouflage, and I went back there and I sat next to a tree, and I saw all these deer, and I was like, oh my gosh, the coolest thing. And my grandfather hunted, and you know, years later, I found out he really wasn't that good of a hunter. He just liked to go out and drink beer, but and try to kill deer. But I got hooked, and he showed me some things, and then, you know, progressively through the years, you know, I just learned more and more and more, and hunting is now hunting and fishing are now my passion, and MMA comes third behind both of them.
That's amazing. It's a dream of mine eventually to like be in a family where we've got like a freezer in the basement, and it's got like turkey and venison, and I don't even have to go and buy meat at the store. It's all been like killed in our backyard. Because I think we had a very similar layout of our my parents' house sits on a few acres of land, and my dad hunted in the backyard my whole childhood. My mother was not into it, and he got his first deer, and he's like, oh, I want the kids to help me track it. So we're all like 7, 8, 9. I mean, we're all still pretty little. And my mom's like, okay, this will be the end of it, because they'll see Bambi dead and they'll hate it, and he'll have to stop. Oh no. We were so into the whole thing. We're
Sure.
finding little spots of blood on the ground, and like we're like little bloodhounds. So he's been,
Yeah.
I mean, he hunted my whole life. We had lots of fresh venison. So love the idea, just not ever something that I've been able to do again.
Sure. No worries.
Okay, so the last question in this little date portion, and this is just because I get so many interesting messages on social media. I would like to
Sure.
hear what's like the weirdest DM you've gotten so far? Because as a fighter, I would imagine that you've gotten a few people, you know, heading into your inbox.
You know, I haven't really got any crazy DMs. It's like right after the fight, I look at like 500 messages, and like you're
That's
saying,
pretty
is
crazy.
I assume, yeah, it was really crazy. And honestly, I've tried to go through and answer every single one individually, and I'm going to try to stay diligent about that, because it does matter. People are taking their time to write me, as long as they're being appropriate. I enjoy going back and forth, and it's a big deal to me, at least, when a couple times where, oh my God, I can't believe you're actually writing me back. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm literally going to make it a very big point to write every single person back. I mean, it might not be right away, but eventually. The weirdest one though, it's not really weird. It's just people telling me how much of a piece of shit I am, I guess, for hunting. I get a lot of that, especially after this weekend. Like, and it's like, man, it's like, if you have a problem with it, just don't write me. Just don't follow me. Like, I would rather have them just not follow me than tell me I was a fan of yours 15 minutes ago, but now that I've went through your pictures and you kill animals, like, I'm not a fan anymore. It's like, I had 3 or 4 people write me that, and it's like, you're wasting it. And I don't know, that I think that's unnecessary. And I'm not saying that hunting's for everybody, but it's a part of my culture. I grew up doing it. Like I said, my family, not all my family, but some of my family does it. In Michigan, everybody does it. November 15th is opening day of gun season, and a lot of times the school will close because they know no kids are going to be in school. I mean, it's a part of the culture. Just because you're, in the UK or wherever you're at and you don't hunt doesn't make me a piece of shit. Like, it'd be like me writing to somebody, in China for that, they do that pet festival. I'm not saying that's right or I agree with it, but I'm not about to call, message somebody like, you're a piece of shit. Like, that's how they grew up. That's what they know. I don't think they're deliberately trying to be abusive towards it. They don't look at these animals like we do. And, I guess that's probably the most annoying messages I get. If you have a problem with it, by sending me a message or commenting on one of my pictures, you're not going to change my input. All you do is you make me think I'm stupid, or you make me think that you're stupid, for even wasting your time to write me this. But that's probably the worst.
That is a weird thing about social media, is that people have just this idea that they can say whatever they want to whomever they want. It's very strange to me, because it's like, I get a lot of weird stuff in my DM.
Sure. I can imagine.
Would you say this to a person, to their face, like just a stranger? It is very, very bizarre to me.
People wish that I die. People are like, oh, I hope you die for killing this deer. It's like, what are you talking about?
Let's stick to fighting. Like, I can deal with it if you're telling me, oh, it was a crappy performance or whatever. Yeah, what do you know? But when people attack somebody personally, I just don't understand it. It's like, you're not meant to be that way. But the weird world we're living in. So I did have a few very fight career centric questions.
Sure.
You fought your first UFC fight with no fans. I want to know how you felt about that, because for a lot of the fights that I've watched, they've asked fighters, how do you feel about the fans being gone? And they're like, oh, I really miss it. It really sucks. I want them all back. As a spectator, I actually don't miss it that much. Mainly because no one's booing, speaking of sending hate to fighters' ways. I've never been a fan of that. I've never understood it. So how did you feel making, your debut to an empty stage, really?
Well, I mean, like I've said before, coming from a wrestling background, most wrestlers, we're used to competing in front of small crowds, if any crowds, wrestling until you get to the higher echelon, state tournament, national tournament. It's mostly an empty arena anyways. And not to mention, I've been on a mission for years, and I'm not going to let something small like that, affect, the goal I've been working towards for so long. I was in such a focus zone. I don't even really remember the fight very well. I don't remember my corner saying anything or not.
Seconds.
I don't think, but yeah, I don't think it would have mattered if there was 100 people there or 1,000 people there. I was so tunnel vision at that time that I went over. I think I didn't even realize there weren't any fans until Herb Dean pulled me off, and I screamed. I clenched my fist and I screamed as loud as I can, and it echoed back to me.
Yeah, I heard it.
At that point, I was like, "Oh, that's kind of weird." But besides that, I didn't even realize it.
Oh my gosh! And the other big debate that I've been hearing since they started having fights in the Apex is the size of the cage. Now, I am ready to start a petition to keep the small cage because I've really, really enjoyed it. And I actually think it favors wrestlers a little bit because there's not as much distance that you need to close. There's a lot more pressure there. How do you feel about the small cage versus the large cage?
Coming up on the regional circuit, we've always fought in a small cage. I mean, I've fought in a cage 5-6 feet, even smaller than that one before.
Oh my gosh.
As for creating the grappling exchanges, I think the smaller cage is better for the grappler. But with that being said, guys like me who don't really care to grapple very much, I like the bigger cage to be able to move around and we can at least slug. And, like I said, I don't know, I prefer the bigger cage. Just I feel less claustrophobic. I feel, you can pick your shots, take your time a little bit more, which, doesn't always necessarily is a good thing from a fan perspective, but from a fighter's perspective, sometimes you do want to take your time. You don't just want to rush in there. The smaller cage is going to push the action. So I guess the smaller cage is more fan friendly, but the bigger cage I think is more fighter friendly.
I think you've said it exactly right. And so
but with that being said, to the casual fan, the smaller cage might not be more fan friendly because there might be more grappling. And not all casual fans know anything about wrestling or grappling. So they don't understand what it's like to have someone pressed up against you in the cage, how exhausting that is. And, I'll be at bars like, oh, this is fucking boring. They're just laying on each other. It's like, that's a very tiring position, gassing the shit out of, each other as you guys are pressed up against the cage. So it's like a catch as catch can kind of thing.
And that is something that I'm hoping to, I know that like, this is still a very new sport and there's still not a whole lot of people that are talking about it. But what I'm hoping that we can do in this, because we have a very unique opportunity in that it's the only sport on right now, I'm really, really hoping that we can get some education out there to the more casual fans, because I've gotten both of my parents into watching, and my father loves it and he really works hard to understand it. My mom, kind of much like hunting, dragging her along very begrudgingly, but she does not care for the grappling. She says exactly those things, like nothing's happening, this is boring. And I'm going, that's only because you don't know what they're doing right now. If you learned exactly what they're doing, then you'd have a little bit more fun with it. So I encourage a lot of the more casual fans that get in contact with me, listen to what the commentators are saying. They actually explain a lot of what's happening, and you can learn a lot, and it becomes easier to understand and more enjoyable for sure.
I agree. And I think the commentators are doing such a good job nowadays, because they're bringing out former fighters that have been there. They can explain, like Michael Bisping, I think, does a great job explaining what's going on with a fun attitude as well.
Oh, sure.
And Dominic Cruz, he's one of the best ever. And it's funny, one of the greatest fighters of all time. That goes back to the nobody in the ring. We're talking in the back and we're joking. It's like, hey, if you can't hear your coach, just listen to the commentators, because a lot of times you can hear the commentators in such a quiet arena and they're saying, oh, he should be doing this, and me and my coaches were joking in the back, hey, if you don't agree with what Dennis and Roman say, just listen to Michael Bisping, listen to Dominic Cruz. Yeah, exactly. So it was kind of funny.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. I thought it was just kind of funny, and fortunately, you know, with everything going on, I was still television. I didn't hear anybody, and it is what it is.
No, I think that's one of the funniest things is that both DC and Michael Bisping get really
DC
loud and excited.
Yeah.
And so they'll like start shouting things. And then I've heard a couple times now, DC has kind of corrected his volume because he's like, oh no, I'm giving things away again. Because I've seen him help a few fighters who have made exactly the adjustments that he suggested. So that has been really interesting. So I was trying to do my homework before we talked and look you up a little bit, but I couldn't find too much information. But I did see that you were listed, I think it was either on SureDog or Tapology, you were listed at 155. Now, was this a move down, or were you fighting at 155 and 145 throughout your career so far, or was this just the opportunity that popped up?
This was just the opportunity that popped up. You know, I think with a full camp, I can have a successful career at 145. With a full camp or even a half camp, I can have a successful career at 155. And with any short notice, I can fight at 170. You know, throughout my career, as a pro, out of my 20 fights, I fought at 145 all the way up to 185. I fought at 185 twice too. I don't think I really belong there. I feel like a little kid going up against a grown man, you know, at 185. But 170, although I even feel small, but I've had success at 70, and I feel 55 is my home. And with the right circumstances, I could do 145 as well.
Okay, so if you had the choice, you would like to do 55, because they're all
I'm
exciting. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's just wherever the opening's at. You know, like I said, if I get a call in 2 or 3 weeks, like, hey, we'll give you the 8-week camp at 145 to fight the right guy. Fuck it, let's run it at 145. If it's at 170, you know, I'm gonna keep I'm gonna keep on my manager. You know, if there's a short notice at 170 and we think it makes sense, I'll jump in. I'll fill in for somebody. I walk around about 170, 175 pounds as is. Sure. So, you know, I could jump in there anytime, you know, just to even do the UFC a favor. But keep in mind, I like to fight too. So, you know, if I see a good matchup and I know it's going to be a barn burner slugfest, and I'll jump in there just for fun.
I think that's great. And it's also a really good way to get noticed. That just recently happened to James Krause. I think he was sitting there, you know, he was cornering. I forget who he was cornering actually, but one of their fighters dropped out and he got on the scale. He was 185. He's like, all right, let's go. Let's do this.
That's right. Sure. And those are real fighters. You know, these guys that want to handpick all their opponents. I call that the new generation of fighters. They just want to shit talk and try to pick out some guys they think they have an edge on. Just get in there and see who's the best, man. I feel, like I said, I've said this in past interviews, like I feel I'm the last type of this generation. You know, there's a guy I used to train with, Caleb Grummett back in the day, man. This guy's a freaking animal. He'd fight anybody from 170 to heavyweight, you know, and he's taking short notice boxing matches at heavyweight. And he walks around like 200 pounds, but it just goes to show you the end of that generation of those guys that would just get in there to fight anybody. And now this more hand selective guys, Generation Z fighters, I guess.
So along those lines then, how do you feel about what's going on with Jones and Masvidal and Conor and all of this, you know, all of this Twitter warfare on what fighters are being paid? I had a couple probably controversial opinions, but I'd love to hear what you think about what all of that is.
You know, I don't know what the guys are getting paid. I'm not really sure. I know that the UFC took care of me, and as of right now, the UFC is taking care of me. I have no complaints about anything right now. I'm sitting here living a dream. I think a lot of times when you get in the spotlight like that, and you're in the spotlight so much as Conor and John are, you know, I think that they're fantastic fighters. I think both of them are fantastic fighters, and they've earned it. You know what I mean? If they feel that they're not getting paid what they're worth, I mean, that's on them. But personally, I think the UFC does a great job in every aspect, you know, staying on the medicals, trying to take care of their fighters. I don't have any complaints, but then again, I've only had one fight. You know, someone like John Jones has been there 20 times, and you know, maybe their opinion's different. But as for now, I like the way I'm treated, so I have no complaints.
There you go. So how do you balance between, because it sounds like you've got a lot of stuff going on in your personal life. You know, you've got your son, you've got hunting, sounds like you snowboard and ski in the mountains, all this stuff. How do you find the right balance between your fight career and the rest of the stuff that you love in life?
You know, I really don't know. That's a tough question. I've never really thought about it. I kind of just do, I guess. It's not really that cut and dry. Like when I feel like if I have an opportunity to go fishing, you know, like for instance, or say I want to go hunting this weekend, you know, and I have to miss a Friday session training, I'll just call one of my coaches, Roman Dennis, and we'll try and double up maybe on Thursday, maybe hit a morning session in the morning. I'm not saying it's always like that, but if I don't have anything coming up, maybe I'll just take a little vacation. But I feel I'm pretty well balanced. And when I start favoring one more than the other, that's kind of when things start to happen. Like if I start, you know, going fishing too much, I'll start gaining weight because, you know, when you're on the boat, you're drinking beer. You know, if I start training too much, I start to get injured. You know what I mean? So there has to be that right middle ground. And I think over the last, and don't get me wrong, every now and then I'll fade one way or the other. But the consistency of holding that middle ground more than not is the most important. So as to answer your question, how do I do it? I don't really know. I just feel like when I really feel like I want to go fishing, I go and then I kind of look at, well, where's your weight at kind of deal. And if my weight's good and my coaches, you know, think it's all right that I get out and relax a little bit, like I'm going to Michigan for 2 weeks now. Basically, I'm just going to be fishing and hanging out for the next 2 weeks, let my cut recover on my head and enjoying family time. So it's much needed and well-deserved. Yeah, I got, we took a little headbutt here.
Yeah, that was right.
When I dropped. No, it was like when he fell down. So when I hit him with that second lip hook, he fell down. Our head barely touched and ended up being a pretty gnarly cut. But all in a day, it's my trophy. You know, for the rest of life, I'll remember. I'll have a cool story why it happened.
It looks like it's healing up well, though. I
think it's gonna be fine. Yeah, scars are cool. Chicks dig them.
It's very true. My mother gives me a lot of grief because I've told her that I like cauliflower ear, and she's like,
sure.
Oh my gosh, that's so weird. And I said, but it's how you know they fight.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you know.
I've spotted it across the bar once, and I'm like, excuse me, I just have.
Yeah, excuse me, sir. Sure.
It's too fun, and them seeing that I know that, all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah. So this chick, she knows what's up. Oh no, that's right. That's a fun thing to like. So just back to your training for 1 second. Did the pandemic affect what you were doing at all, or were you? Because I've heard two totally opposite. There were some people that are like, I gained 15-20 pounds, I didn't train at all, and then there were other people that were like, nope, I continued going to the gym, I ate what I needed to eat, I stayed ready. It's either or.
It's, you know, it did affect, it changed it a lot because I work at the gym too. I'm a personal trainer. I run coaching. I run a kids program, a fitness program at the gym. So it was a big change. But with that being said, back to what we're talking about balance, like I've been training so hard for so many months since I had hand surgery in October. I was able to get back to training in January, and I was busting my ass January, February. Then when March came with the pandemic, it was like perfect timing because, you know, I was starting to get burned out, you know, training full time, like for a fight, you know, that was tough. So when the first thing hit, the gym was closed. Nobody was able to go in there. I just, you know, I went to my yin and yang, and I went out and I started doing a lot more hunting and a lot more fishing. And and to keep my weight down, you know, and to keep me in check, I was fasting a lot. So I wouldn't eat all day until like 6 or 7 p.m. You know, as I'm out sweating, walking up and down mountains and, you know, on my dirt bike or whatever, you know, ripping up and down, you know. So I didn't really gain very much weight. So when we were able to get back to training, my weight was already low, and I'd only had a couple weeks off anyway. So it all worked out perfect. It couldn't have worked out any better.
You know what Dana says, stay fight ready, and you might get that call. I mean, that's probably one of the best rules to tell people is if you stay ready, you never know when that call up might come. Okay, so I can only assume that eventually you'd like to have that belt. You'd like to have a world title. I don't think I've ever spoken to a professional fighter that doesn't want that title. So I'm not going to ask you what your goal is in that regard, because of course it's to be the best. But outside
You might be surprised by my answer. You might be surprised by my
answer. Then I'll ask you the question. Outside of a world title, what's the biggest thing you hope to achieve in professional MMA?
Even more than a world title. Yeah, the world title is the cream of the crop. You can't get any higher than that. But even more important to me than that is just being an exciting fighter. And that's more important than money. That's more important than titles. Of course, everybody wants to be the world champ. And of course, my ultimate goal is to be the world champ. But if I had the decision to make, I could be a world champion and win 10 boring fights by grappling and grinding out decisions, or I could get performance bonus and fight 10 times and say I lose a couple of those times, but I get knocked out, but it's a slugfest, like Eddie Alvarez and Justin Gaethje kind of thing. I would much prefer the 10 performance of the bonus nights, because at the end of the day, I want to be remembered as an exciting fighter. I want people not to really care about the wins and losses throughout my career, because there's going to be wins and there's going to be losses. I want them to be like, man, did you see that fight? That fight was incredible. Not, oh yeah, Justin's the champ. He took a guy down and laid on him for 15 minutes or 25 minutes, when it comes. That's boring to me. And I don't ever want to think when watching my fights that the fans, whether they're or not, would be booing or are booing. I want to get hit. I want to bleed, and I want to make my opponents bleed. And, I just want slugfest, and I just want to have fun. In wrestling, it's required to win sometimes, yes, but it's really not that fun, and it's really not that exciting to me. Like I said, I want to see big power shots, and I want to see people fall, and I want to hit people where they fall, and I want to get hit to where I fall too.
All right. Well, I would say that with a 41-second knockout, you are well on your way to achieving that goal. It was a very exciting fight to watch. Loved it as a fan. I love hearing all of that, because of course, as much as I love the technique and I love the dance of it all, it's still really fun when it becomes one of those slugfests. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I wish you all the luck in the world in chasing that dream. Like I said, I think well on your way.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Have a great rest of your day.
You as well. Thanks.
Bye.